Today is a beautiful day to dive deep into the emotional wreckage and high-stakes drama currently unfolding on our screens. The landscape of the fashion world has been irrevocably altered, but the true casualties of this corporate warfare are not profit margins or press releases. They are the fragile human hearts caught in the crossfire. Following a devastating and highly publicized defection to Logan Creations, Hope Logan Spencer finds herself navigating the absolute darkest chapter of her entire life. The glamorous, sparkling veneer of the high-stakes fashion industry has been entirely stripped away, leaving behind a shattered, vulnerable young woman desperately trying to piece together her fractured identity after suffering the ultimate maternal betrayal. The agonizing echo of Brooke Logan Forrester's vicious disownment continues to reverberate through every single aspect of Hope's existence. Being cast out of the family cabin and verbally annihilated by the woman she looked up to most was a psychological blow from which Hope has simply not been able to recover. Instead of allowing herself the necessary time and grace to grieve the profound, suffocating loss of her mother's love and support, Hope has chosen a far more dangerous and self-destructive coping mechanism. She has thrown her entire soul, mind, and rapidly depleting physical energy into her new role at Logan Creations. For Hope, this new fashion line is no longer just a lucrative business venture or a passionate creative outlet. It has violently transformed into a desperate, frantic crusade to prove her worth to the world. She is driven by a toxic, volatile combination of agonizing heartbreak and a desperate need to validate her existence to the mother who so callously threw her away like yesterday's news. Within the sleek, modern walls of the Logan Creations building, Hope has become an unstoppable, yet highly concerning force of nature. She spends her days and nights obsessively reviewing intricate sketches with Deke Sharp, agonizing over every single stitch, fabric choice, and runway lighting cue until her vision blurs. The pursuit of perfection has morphed into a dangerous, consuming obsession. Hope genuinely believes that if she can just orchestrate the most magnificent, flawless fashion debut the industry has ever witnessed, the overwhelming success might somehow fill the gaping, bleeding hole in her chest. She uses the chaotic, adrenaline-fueled momentum of the impending launch to drown out the deafening, agonizing silence left by her estranged family. This profound, crushing isolation has created a suffocating atmosphere around the young designer. While Katie Logan and Bill Spencer are absolutely thrilled by the corporate victory of acquiring Hope and the massive media buzz surrounding the upcoming launch, they remain tragically oblivious to the severe psychological toll it is taking on their star asset. Katie views Hope's relentless, grueling work ethic as a sign of dedication and passion, failing to recognize it as a frantic, silent cry for help. Hope is utterly alone in a crowded room, surrounded by public relations teams, models, and executives who only see her as a highly profitable brand rather than a grieving daughter. The emotional sanctuary she once found in her mother's embrace has been entirely replaced by the cold, unforgiving demands of the fashion industry. The severe mental and emotional strain inevitably begins to manifest as a terrifying, rapid physical deterioration. Hope's radiant, youthful glow is quickly replaced by hollow cheekbones, dark, bruised circles under her eyes, and a terrifyingly frail frame that seems ready to snap under the slightest pressure. She routinely skips meals, substituting necessary nutrition with endless cups of black coffee and sheer, nervous adrenaline. Sleep has become a rare and elusive luxury, constantly plagued by horrifying nightmares of Brooke's furious, screaming face and the echoing sound of shattering glass. Liam Spencer watches in absolute, helpless horror as his beloved wife slowly disintegrates right before his eyes, unable to pull her out of this dangerous nosedive. Despite Liam's desperate, tearful pleas for her to slow down, to rest, and to prioritize her failing health, Hope stubbornly refuses to halt her destructive momentum. She is running entirely on the fumes of sheer willpower and unresolved, festering trauma, completely ignoring the blaring, flashing warning signs her own body is sending her. The stakes of the fashion show have been elevated to an astronomical level. Katie and Bill have hyped this event to the media in a deliberate attempt to eclipse Eric Forrester's haute couture line. The entire fashion world is watching with bated breath, placing a crushing, monumental responsibility squarely on Hope's fragile shoulders to deliver an absolute masterpiece. As the highly anticipated launch day finally arrives, the atmosphere inside the Logan Gallery is electric with a palpable, chaotic, and suffocating tension. The 0 hour is rapidly approaching, and the stakes have never been higher for the Spencer and Logan families. The ruthless press corps is lining up outside the grand double doors, eager to witness the spectacular debut that promises to change the Los Angeles fashion hierarchy forever. Inside the venue, the blinding, pristine runway lights are tested, the heavy, thumping bass of the shows. Soundtrack reverberates through the floorboards, and the frantic backstage energy reaches a dangerous boiling point. Hope stands completely alone at the end of the empty, sprawling catwalk, staring out into the vast sea of vacant chairs waiting to be filled by the industry's elite. The monumental magnitude of the moment crashes down upon her fragile psyche. This was supposed to be the triumphant, glorious pinnacle of her career, a moment of independent, shining glory. Yet, as she looks out into the sprawling venue, all she can think about is the agonizing reality of the one empty seat that should have been occupied by her mother. The heartbreak is a physical weight, pressing down on her chest with the force of a collapsing building. Suddenly, the blinding, pristine runway lights seem to violently blur and streak across her vision, painting the room in dizzying, nauseating colors. The heavy, rhythmic thumping of the rehearsal music fades into a high-pitched, deafening ringing in her ears that drowns out all other sound. A severe, paralyzing panic attack fueled by weeks of repressed emotional trauma and catastrophic physical exhaustion violently seizes control of her failing body. Hope gasps frantically for air, feeling as though an invisible, iron vice is crushing her lungs. The expansive room violently spins, the sleek white floor of the catwalk rushing up to meet her at a terrifying speed. In a horrifying, heart-stopping moment of pure, tragic vulnerability, Hope's trembling legs completely give out beneath her. She collapses heavily onto the cold, hard, polished surface of the runway, her consciousness rapidly slipping away into a dark, merciful, and silent void. The shining star of Logan Creations falls just moments before her grand, highly publicized debut, becoming a tragic, broken casualty of a senseless, bitter family war. The sound of her fragile body hitting the floor sends a shockwave of absolute, paralyzing terror through the gallery, halting the frantic preparations in an instant. Liam Spencer, who had been anxiously hovering near the backstage entrance watching his wife with growing dread, witnesses the terrifying, sudden collapse. A primal, guttural scream of pure agony rips from his throat as he sprints recklessly down the length of the catwalk, sliding to his knees beside her unconscious, pale body. He frantically gathers her limp, fragile frame into his trembling arms, desperately begging her to open her eyes and stay with him. The sheer, unadulterated panic in Liam's voice echoes through the cavernous room, completely shattering the glamorous, superficial illusion of the fashion show. In that agonizing, suspended moment, holding the unconscious woman he loves more than life itself, Liam realizes the true, devastating, and horrific cost of this corporate feud. Hope has literally worked herself into the ground, driven to the absolute brink of physical and mental ruin by the unbearable, crushing weight of her mother's unforgiving cruelty. Hope is immediately rushed to the nearest hospital, where a team of medical professionals work frantically to stabilize her severely depleted and exhausted system. The flashing lights of the ambulance and the sterile smell of the emergency room replace the glitz and glamour of the runway. When Hope finally regains consciousness in the sterile, quiet, and blindingly white environment of her hospital room, the immediate physical exhaustion is slowly being treated, but the deep, dark, festering psychological wounds are ripped wide open. The terrifying collapse strips away the protective, numbing barrier of her relentless workaholism, forcing Hope to confront the terrifying, bleak reality of her situation. A profound, suffocating, and paralyzing depression violently takes hold of her shattered spirit. The glitz, the glamour, the impending financial success of the new fashion line, absolutely none of it matters anymore in the face of this profound emotional emptiness. She is trapped in a dark, agonizing, and lonely void, utterly consumed by the horrifying realization that she has entirely lost her mother's love and protection. The professional triumph she so desperately and frantically chased has been entirely eclipsed by this devastating, life-altering personal tragedy. As Liam watches his beloved wife stare blankly at the sterile hospital wall, completely hollowed out by a depression so deep it terrifies him, his initial, paralyzing terror rapidly morphs into an absolute, blinding, and volcanic rage. He knows exactly who is responsible for putting Hope in this fragile, broken state. Liam does not blame the inherent stress of the cutthroat fashion industry, nor does he blame Katie or Bill's ruthless corporate ambitions. Liam directs his volcanic, unyielding, and furious wrath entirely at Brooke Logan Forrester. In Liam's protective eyes, Brooke's vicious, unforgiving disownment, her cruel, manipulative ultimatums, and her violent, public rejection were the direct, undeniable catalysts for Hope's terrifying physical and mental collapse. He views Brooke not as a grieving, betrayed mother, but as a toxic, vindictive, and heartless monster who prioritized her own stubborn pride and a corporate logo over the actual life, sanity, and well-being of her own flesh and blood. Liam absolutely refuses to let this horrific transgression go unanswered. He marches directly into Brooke's domain, unleashing a blistering, ferocious, and merciless verbal assault that shakes the very foundation of the Logan estate. He brutally and graphically outlines exactly what Brooke's harshness has done to Hope, painting a horrifying, vivid picture of her daughter collapsing lifelessly on the cold runway floor. Liam fiercely and unapologetically declares that Brooke has permanently forfeited her right to call herself Hope's mother. Bill Spencer, fiercely protective of his son and his newly acquired star designer, immediately and ruthlessly backs Liam up. Bill uses his immense wealth, power, and intimidating presence to shield Hope, actively fanning the roaring flames of this explosive, vicious new war between the Spencer family and Brooke. The Spencers draw a hard, impenetrable, and unyielding line in the sand, vowing to protect Hope from any further emotional abuse or manipulation at the hands of her own mother. The horrifying news of Hope's collapse and Liam's blistering, venomous accusations strike Brooke with the devastating force of a runaway freight train. The thick, impenetrable veil of her stubborn pride, burning anger, and intense feelings of betrayal is instantly and violently pierced by the sharp, agonizing blade of pure maternal terror. For the very first time since Hope tearfully announced her defection to Logan Creations, Brooke is forced to look in the mirror and confront the terrifying, ugly, and undeniable reality of her own ruthless actions. The shattered glass of the monitor she violently smashed, the cruel, venomous words of disownment she spewed, the heartless eviction from the family cabin, all of these haunting memories flood her mind. They no longer feel like justified, righteous discipline, but rather like acts of unspeakable, unforgivable cruelty against her own child. Brooke is violently thrown into a devastating, earth-shattering emotional awakening, realizing that her blind quest for absolute loyalty may have actually cost her her daughter's life. A crushing, unbearable, and suffocating wave of profound regret washes over the Logan matriarch. Brooke falls to her trembling knees, sobbing uncontrollably and hysterically as the horrifying magnitude of her harshness finally, brutally sets in. She wanted to teach Hope a firm lesson about family loyalty and respect, but instead, she pushed her fragile, sensitive daughter far past the breaking point of human endurance. Brooke realizes with sickening clarity that her toxic, unforgiving stance has not saved Hope from Katie's corporate influence, but has instead driven Hope straight into a severe, life-threatening physical and mental breakdown. The agonizing, torturous question now plagues Brooke's every waking thought and haunts her every dream. Has she permanently, irreparably destroyed the sacred, beautiful mother-daughter bond they once shared? She desperately wants to rush to the hospital, to hold her little girl tightly, to beg for forgiveness on her hands and knees. But she is paralyzed by the terrifying, sickening realization that she is the very source of Hope's profound trauma. Meanwhile, back in the sterile, quiet confines of the hospital, Hope remains deeply trapped in her unyielding, dark depression, unable to find the light. The news that Brooke has finally realized the error of her ways offers absolutely no comfort to the shattered, traumatized young woman. The catastrophic damage has been done, and the emotional scars are far too deep, jagged, and painful to be healed by a simple, tearful apology. Hope feels utterly and completely abandoned, her spirit entirely crushed by the horrifying realization that her mother's love was entirely conditional, predicated solely on her continued employment at Forrester Creations. The chasm between mother and daughter has never been wider, filled with bitter resentment, unspeakable trauma, and the haunting, terrifying memory of that cold runway floor. Hope must now embark on a long, grueling, and painful journey of psychological recovery, entirely devoid of the maternal support and unconditional love she once relied upon so heavily. As the dust slowly settles on this catastrophic, heartbreaking collapse, the social and corporate landscape of Los Angeles is left forever scarred by the toxic fallout. The highly anticipated launch of Logan Creations has been permanently marred by near-fatal tragedy, transforming a moment of corporate triumph into a somber, terrifying reflection on the toxic, destructive nature of family feuds. Liam and Bill Spencer stand as fierce, unyielding, and intimidating sentinels around Hope, ready to wage an endless, brutal war against anyone who threatens her fragile recovery. Brooke Logan Forrester is left to drown in her own agonizing, suffocating guilt, forced to face the horrifying, lonely consequences of her unforgiving wrath. The ultimate question hangs heavy and unresolved in the tense California air. Is it ever too late to save a relationship that has been so violently, brutally, and thoroughly shattered?